82% allocated funding, which totals 3.4 million Namibian dollars, will go towards the following: short film project support, feature film support, the hosting of the biannual Namibia Theatre and Film Awards, the economic impact study, we will talk about that a little bit now, festival and market support for industry professionals, bursaries for 10 students, again at the College of the Arts, training in partnership with MultiChoice Namibia, mixes for networking of industry professionals, the annual call-out, and with it the payment of judging panels for the film pitches, and this call-out is due to go up in about 2 weeks' time. Payment of the trainees that we attach to local films, and then the premieres of the local films. In order to enhance the local screen culture, the Commission will do screenings of local films nationwide in collaboration with MICT regional offices, because it is important for us to tap into that resource that we have. Again, when we look at the resources, financial resources that the Commission has received, we cannot travel at leisure as in the past. So these resources that are available, we have to make use of. And hence the MICT regional offices come into play there. It will further engage funding partners to assist it in acquiring solar-powered cinema sets for donating to rural communities in order to bring local stories to rural communities. I think we should use our sun more. Isn't that a fantastic idea? Moving on to our economic impact study. As you are all aware, the NFC board commissioned a study to determine the economic impact of the film sector on the Namibian economy for the past 5 years. And again, if we are looking at the industry's contribution to our GDP, we are finally one step ahead. The research commenced in February of 2019, and the findings are expected to be published in October 2019. Brave Bird Research Company is currently busy with the data collection phase, and once again a call is made to all of the industry practitioners to cooperate should they be approached by the company, because it's important that we have the correct information, and who better to provide it than the people who are on the ground constantly. On incentives. After various discussions with the Namibia Investment Centre since 2013, they accepted a proposal to incentivize the film sector in Namibia towards the end of 2018. The NIC indicated that the proposal is with the Minister of Industrialization, Trade and SME Development, Honourable Chikera Tuea, and he, after consulting his counterpart at the Ministry of Finance, will submit the proposal to Cabinet as soon as possible for endorsement. The Namibia Investment Centre approved 2 types of incentives for the film sector, namely production and studio incentives. But that is fantastic news, because if we look at Namibia as a film destination, people love our country because we have the landscapes, a stable environment, it's peaceful, and yet we are also competing with countries like South Africa, Morocco, and the first thing that people always ask when we travel to film festivals is, oh great, we would love to come to your country and shoot. Do you have incentives? And the answer had always been no. So hopefully we hope that soon enough we will be able to add a yes to that. Moving on to the film industry formalization. The film industry in Namibia has for the longest time been operating in silos. The NFC board thus started a process of formalizing the industry in order to improve the quality of content, allow for networking and collaboration, and build capacity in the industry. As a first step, it brought together all local facilitators of foreign productions in the country, and after much debate and benchmarking, an agreement was reached to register all local facilitators based on a very clear criteria. The registration form was developed and approved, and an annual registration fee of 1,200 Namibian dollars was agreed upon. The registration is expected to start in May, but obviously happens on a continuous basis. Once companies have registered, they will be listed on the NFC website, and all foreign productions would be expected to do their projects listed through facilitators only. In the past, we know that some of the companies coming to Namibia would go through the NFC, and this is really something that we're trying to avoid, to make sure that we build capacity in the industry and link any and all productions that come to the country with a local facilitator. Again, it creates an opportunity for people who are not facilitators at the moment to step into that. So we know that we divide it into the local content producers and facilitating companies, and there is an opportunity for content producers to make that shift with this. The formalization of content producers is slated for this year, and the same process would be followed to bring about unity in the sector. So again, that same process would be followed. In terms of strategic partnerships for local content creation, the NFC acknowledges the economic climate prevailing in the country and continues to seek partnerships with individuals, banks, corporates, and foreign partners for local content creation. So far, the First National Bank of Namibia has committed to fully fund the 48-hour film initiative, Kino Namibia, which is scheduled for the 24th to the 26th of August this year. The project brings together upcoming film enthusiasts over 2 days and develops local short films from script to screen in those 2 days. Last year, about 100 experienced and amateurs gathered and created 11 short films, which were screened on One Africa television. We plead with experienced filmmakers to assist where need be in mentoring, should the organizers knock on your door. The Goethe Institute Namibia and MultiChoice Namibia have affirmed their commitment to collaborate with the NFC to develop the industry. Air Namibia has been very helpful in providing ticket discounts to industry, staff, and commissioners for international events. In February this year, it provided a 50% discounted rate to the NFC to enable them to attend the Berlin International Film Festival. And these engagements with the corporate world will continue, because again, we have to make sure that there is an injection from our local corporate market into the local industry. And again, looking at our budget, that isn't what we would have liked it to be. We have to build on these relationships. The NFC intends to take this discussion forward with the Namibia Investment Centre, the Namibia Tourism Board, Team Namibia, as well as all other local agencies with a mandate to market Namibia to global investors towards a joint international marketing strategy for the country. It just makes sense. At the end of the day, we all have the same goal. We would like to have people come into Namibia, whether it is to film or to invest. And it is important for us to work together with strategic stakeholders so that we can achieve that for the future. With the Theatre and Film Awards slated for 5 October 2019, the NFC board is hard at work to raise funds through fundraising events with identified stakeholders. The award-winning makeup artist from Black Panther, Miss Camille Friend, may likely grace the occasion. Yes. Moving on to regional and international collaboration. The NFC initiated a memorandum of agreement with the Institute of Film and Television in Ghana. We're always reaching out to the rest of the world, but it's so important for us to engage with African filmmakers, and you will understand soon why. The Commission intends to visit Ghana and Nigeria later this year to tap into their wealth of distribution networks and film expertise. This will also provide an opportunity for the Commission to popularize the Kautoma Film Fund and ensure collaboration amongst Namibian filmmakers and their African counterparts. And this fund was basically created very strategically so that we can create connectivity between Namibian and African filmmakers. So far, we've had only one application for this fund, and it didn't meet all of the criteria, so it had been sent back to the producers. But we would like to encourage all local filmmakers to engage with other African filmmakers or filmmakers in the diaspora, because this creates a perfect platform to produce together and to make sure that we can create Namibian content that can go beyond our borders. Through the National Planning Commission, the NFC intends to engage development partners, Japan, Turkey, the United Nations, the European Union, China, and Germany. And these are all new ventures that we are looking at, because one way that we can really push our industry forward is by creating a distribution network for what we are producing in our country. And again, also collaborations with different filmmakers from these countries. Namibia and Germany share a rich political history and have already existing bilateral agreements in various sectors. Last year, 22 productions carried out in Namibia, or 15%, came from Germany, and in the last 5 years, about 89 German productions came to Namibia. The Chinese market, on the other hand, offers endless possibilities, and the first attempt is to have the movie Namibia, The Struggle for Liberation translated in Mandarin for distribution in China. And I think it has been mentioned at a previous occasion, our last mixer, that China is really interested in African content. So if you are interested, you can reach out to the NFC. There is some information available to see how you can already tap into working with producers from there. In terms of customer service, the NFC strives to maintain professionalism at all times and has started the process of putting its permit application online. It's about 65% done at the moment and expected to be completed by the end of June 2019. It also revamped its website, which should be ready for launch in May this year. Film and photography application fees are expected to increase from the current 500 Namibia dollars to 1,500 Namibia dollars this year. And this might seem like quite a jump, but taking into consideration that since the NFC started charging for permits, it's never been increased. And of course, it is important for us to look at ways to create additional revenue for the Commission. To avoid the exploitation of vulnerable communities in filming, such as the Ovahimba and the Sun, the NFC board initiated discussions with the affected communities and will hold workshops in May this year to draft guidelines for filming of marginalized groups. A feedback form has furthermore been developed to respond to the needs of our international and local clients. Again, this exit form just allows the NFC to really keep checks in terms of if people say, you know, this amount of Namibians have worked for us, etc. How can we better our service to people who come to our country? So that is quite a milestone. For the first time, the NFC will also start to visit film sets for inspection and to ensure compliance. This is very important because we don't want to overregulate, but we have to make sure that if we want to have an industry that is formalized, that we have to honor the regulations that are in place. And I think that will make sure that we don't have any problems or the least amount of problems. In conclusion, the NFC board recommits itself to do their utmost best to grow and develop the industry despite the many challenges that exist. And we are all aware of these, biggest being the economic situation that we are currently facing. However, with the resources available to our disposal and the passion to turn this industry into a striving one, we will together forge ahead.
Is the NFC also looking in other ways to raise funds, besides fundraising as well, with or smart partnerships with other organizations, in terms of distribution for example, or getting the film, or getting people to watch the films online as streaming revenue, an example like that, or for other people to across the world to see the films as well in that light.
The relationships that the NFC is now trying to build with the countries that I previously mentioned, Japan, Turkey, we're looking at the United Nations, the EU. Of course, here the scope will broaden, and it will allow us to actually have access to potential funding, which haven't, these platforms haven't been accessed before. However, as mentioned, we will continue fundraising within the country. On the other hand, the NFC is really a facilitator and not, a distribution company per se. So what the Commission can do is create platforms or an enabling environment by creating relationships with different countries, hence Ghana, we're looking at Nigeria, because the bigger the market share can be, the bigger the revenue can be in the end. So it is important also in the same breath to mention that filmmakers now should realize whatever it is that are being created within our country needs to be done with, it must be an export product in mind. So, of course, we are working towards that. We can't do the distribution on, or create those platforms, but we can create relationships that will create a space for filmmakers to access these maybe distribution platforms or potential collaborations. If we're looking at, we have sort of like advanced quite a bit with South Africa, where we have an MOU already in place. We are now working with Germany. And just to make an example, let's say, for example, there is an existing, or we finalize these co-production agreements between these various countries and Namibia. If a filmmaker co-produces with a German producer or a South African producer, immediately the country has dual the product has dual citizenship, means that it will be broadcast or it will screen in these various countries, and filmmakers will also have access to funding from these various countries. So not just then from the Namibian budget, but the product can go to the country that also co-produces with the filmmaker.
I recall there was some sort of an agreement between the Filmmakers Association in South Africa and Namibia. Has that thing been endorsed and finalized? I'm interested to find out that.
What the NFC has done in the meantime is there was a production that was done in collaboration with the NFVF, where we sent 2 female young directors to South Africa for 6 months, and they have produced 2 short films with the NFVF. That was sort of like, I think, a test phase at first to see how well it worked or would work for long-term purposes. But the 2 films had been completed now, and yes, there will be a premiere of these films, and then the board will discuss the way forward in terms of future ventures. Again, looking at our current budget situation, we have to take everything into consideration. But yes, that relationship has definitely been started on.
I just wanted to find out if there are some aspiring actors, filmmakers out there that want to get hold or get some funds to do their projects. How can they get hold of these funds? Because the concern has been that some complain that it's always the same faces or same people that get the funds.
Well, at this stage, I'm really glad to mention, and we have actually started doing that. It was important to, with the call out, really make sure that experienced filmmakers are separated from newcomers because we really can't treat them the same. So with the call-outs now, there is a category created for newcomers, and that allows the first-time filmmaker who has a script to actually be part of the process. And again, it may be that, you know, these youngsters have been out there doing something on their own, and this creates a platform. So with a call-out, there is a criteria. They can have a look at it. And of course, if they comply, then they can be considered for funding.
Could you just remind me, what was the number of international productions in the last 12 months?
130.
130. How many of those were facilitated by local facilitators?
That information I do not have with me, but I'm sure that our media team can get it to you.
Could we please get that information? How many people were employed from Namibia on those productions, please?
803 Namibians.
In which capacities?
More in training capacity. We're still not at HOD level.
Do you have any plans in the future as the representatives of our film industry internationally to change that? I think this question basically I can answer it twofold. So the first, I think, opportunity that we can, or how we can increase local industry practitioners working on international productions would be with the system that we are now implementing. Because if a local film company is attached to a foreign production company coming into the country, then I think there is room for the local producer to push for more of our teams to get absorbed into the productions and not just as trainees. Secondly, we all know that, you know, the biggest complaint always would be, oh, but you don't have the skill, you guys are not trained well enough. And that is a very big priority for us. So again, we're trying with the fundraising, we are trying to make sure that we create enough opportunity for people to engage in production, but also to be trained, because in terms of upping our skills, that is a big requirement. If you want to be an HOD or just be considered in a fairly well-positioned area within a foreign production, then you need to be able to do the job. We also don't want to be in a situation where we push for people to be employed and then they can't deliver. I think that would be the biggest mistake that we can make. So yeah, in terms of that, we're trying to see that we can reach a balance or a better status quo. Just in line with that, how many people were trained last year through the NFC?
We had 69 people and then 12 aspiring filmmakers who were trained for the year.
Okay. What was the total revenue generated through those 139 projects, 130 international projects, please?
About 74 million Namibian dollars, yeah.
How do you get to that number?
There's an expenditure report that gets sent back to the NFC, and that is how, along with the permits that then gets issued, that the NFC then calculates.
Would it be possible to get a list of who facilitated those locally, please?
Yes.
All 130?
Yes.
Where local facilitation was done, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Because as far as I'm concerned, and from my observation, I think when it comes to call-out, where we tend to lack a little bit is that information to tell people exactly what it is. Maybe I must recommend that every follow-up, every call-out maybe be accompanied by information, some sort of information sharing, something, to say, look, requirement A, B, C, D, it's what it is in order to prepare people more. Now, I get it all the time that same faces are the ones that are always there in the forefront when it comes to recipients and so on. But it's because the same faces are maybe more experienced in doing the dossiers and putting together packages, and it will seem like it is people are favored. So just a recommendation there.
Yeah. We've had some questions and some input after our last call out last year. There had been some engagement on that because obviously we tried to make it the process as easy and accessible as possible for every filmmaker. So that is a very good point that you are making, and we are definitely going to take it into consideration. As for the African Film Fund, the communication was sent to the producer, so perhaps you must just check in with her then. But I do think, because it was also the first year, the African Film Fund, Kautoma, was launched last year. So we haven't really gained momentum. It was mentioned at the film festivals. It is mentioned when we are engaging with other African filmmakers. But of course, again, if there is an opportunity, a direct opportunity for a local filmmaker to work with an African filmmaker, I think it just immediately creates the space where something can happen, as opposed to the NFC just sharing the information, because obviously the NFC doesn't produce. But if filmmakers are interested to do that. So anyone for this year, if you are interested to collaborate with another African filmmaker, the fund is there. It does fund up to 1 million. So not just for a specific project, but it can on merit decide how much to allocate to each production when it does come onto the table.
A lot of us are members of the Film Association, but now it seems that FEN is not operational, it's dormant. Maybe you should now beef up the representation of the regional film, the regional MICT officers, so that when we want to engage the Film Commission, we have got representation in the regions. It is quite important. I remember when we were in Germany, we discussed a lot of things with regards to local content at the embassy in Namibia, the Namibian embassy in Berlin. But this is. It seems that if in the absence of FEN, it is almost null and void, you know, because as I keep on repeating, if we cannot produce local content, we will keep on having NBC not broadcasting anything. And we need to up our regional, you know, whether it's satellite offices or the regional MICT offices, so that we can have representation there in terms of, you know, grassroots film development aspect.
It's really important to understand that one cannot underestimate the importance of a national film organization, a membership organization. And I really hope that, after today, that FAN can really revive itself again. And I know that some of us had been there and been recycled, but it is indeed also time for new blood. And the initiative has to come from the filmmakers also. There has to be some responsibility that lies also with the individual, because with our individual and our collective efforts, we can really build this industry. So at this moment, while the NFC is really trying to work hard in achieving these fantastic goals that we're setting out to achieve, that FAN can be revived and just extend that arm to the rest of the industry.
In my understanding, you and Joe are representing us through the FNC, FAN. Is that off the cards?
No.
Or who are you representing then?
No, absolutely not. But what we are saying is that the current board of FAN, there had been non-activity for quite some time. That is why we are reaching out to filmmakers individually, and we've time and time again, even at our last mixer, we have mentioned the importance of FAN and that it needs to be active. Unfortunately, we can't on a day-to-day basis make sure that it's operational, but it is important for us as the board or the NFC to make sure that we reach the filmmakers. So with FAN not being active at the moment, we use the direct platform. But again,
You answered my question. I'm asking, are you representing the film FAN as an organization on the board here? It used to be like that. But you speak as if you are distanciating yourself from FAN, because that's the way FAN has operated for many years with the Film Commission. And it seems it just disappeared, because there are so many young people that I know of who are members of FAN, and they need to be assisted if we are going to make progress. Why is FAN just dumped out of the equation now?
Freddie, I really would like to make very clear that FAN has not been dumped out of the equation. I think this is a simple case.
Like that.
No. I think it is a simple case of the FAN board needing to step up and making sure that there are activities to engage the filmmakers. In the absence of FAN being active, we as the board are engaging directly on a regular basis, because again, as you rightfully mentioned, we are representing the film industry. And yes, through FAN, because that is the recognized body by the minister. But in the absence of any activity of FAN, this is now the situation. So again, the current FAN board, or the board that was there, need to step up and they need to become active again. And unfortunately, that is because we are not the FAN board. We can't do that. The FAN board must step up and take up this responsibility that they've been handed by the members.
I really think that the NFC has to intervene in there. And it will only be to your benefit, the NFC now, because if you have an industry which is in disarray, I don't think it serves you in your programs and what you want to implement. You first want to organize that so that what comes through that is at least better organized. And if I'm not mistaken, up to some point, the NFC used to give an annual grant to Film Commission, to FAN. What happened to that? Do you care?
I mean, there was engagement with the FAN board, but just to answer Vixen's question, the board hasn't applied for the annual grant because I don't think they have offices at the moment. But again, point taken for us to make sure to check in and probably assist in getting FAN up and running. But I do want to come back to the fact that the NFC board can't do that alone. If FAN and the FAN members and its board doesn't work together, because that's a membership organization. It was started to build relationships, to network, and to create that platform. And of course, where the representatives come from. So, point well taken, Vixen.
I would like to add on to this whole FAN discussion and reiterate what Miranda just said. FAN is a membership organization. I don't understand why we're talking about FAN as if it's a beast all on its own. FAN is the industry. FAN is the people sitting here, the filmmakers working in the industry. The Film Commission cannot possibly be in charge of reviving FAN or of running FAN, because how will FAN then be able to take the NFC to task on industry matters should it get to that point? How will FAN and the NFC engage on an equal level if we're expecting the NFC to be in charge of FAN? When FAN received that grant from the NFC, there were great relations. FAN ran an office. We had 4 years of Namibia Film Week. We had screenings of those short films that were released in those years. FAN was working because there were people interested in being part of FAN. You have a meeting on a Saturday morning and 5 or 6 people show up to the meeting. So how can FAN exist? So I'm very sorry, but I do not agree that the Namibian Film Commission should be left with a hot potato of FAN on their laps, when what it needs is for us to pull together as an industry and ask what happened to FAN, decide what is its mandate even, is it even worth it to still revive it at that point? That is the question actually to ask. What does FAN do, and is there a point in reviving it? NFC cannot be held accountable for FAN at this point.
Excuse me. This meeting was for the NFC Industry Development Plan. Now we are discussing matters of individuals, of FAN. This is not a FAN discussion. This was an NFC Industry Development Plan discussion. So can I please ask that the FAN discussion be taken offline and let FAN come together and sort out the FAN issue and then report back to the board. I thank you.
There has to be some responsibility with the current FAN board, even though it might be dormant, because there was a responsibility that was handed over to individuals. And it's not just a title that you have when you are supposed to be on that board. You have to work. You have to make sure that meetings are arranged, that people get together, because that's the only way that it can live on. And in the absence of that, what happens? Then it starts dying out. So that is a conversation that we need to have on the ground. I think an industry mixer is a perfect platform because we are all a little bit more informal and we will have a lot more time on hand for discussions like that. So Freddie, please, you can share your thoughts then at that time.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what has been said here.
Okay.
I ask you, as that relationship between FAN and the Film Commission, has it been made dormant or just gotten rid of? That was the question, because I still see you and Joe as representing FAN there. But now you speak as if you are not connected to FAN. That was the question. And this, Mr. Willemse here, we have problems. You come in here now for the first time. We're sitting here in this organization for many years. And if the basis of the membership is not right, how do you expect the youth to come into the equation? You heard this lady from NBC. There's a concern. Why is it always the same people? Now you answered, they are still amateurs. When are they going to be upgraded from that amateur status, but through FAN, to get noticed by the Film Commission? That was my question.
It
doesn't matter how we defend this thing. This is not a FAN meeting. It's part of the film industry. That's why we can't grow. And these are the problems we are facing.
Thank you, Freddie. I would like to, for the record, just state very clearly that although it seems that FAN might be dormant, we have not chosen to disconnect a relationship with FAN as the NFC board. I think it is just a matter of the board not being active and not reaching out and not being around. But again, we will take this conversation further at our industry mixers, and the board will follow up in the meantime to see what the situation is on the ground. In the light of that, clearly we have not gotten around some of the challenges that we are facing. And I think that is an indication that we do have to work together. Nothing happens by itself. This is not a task that we can do alone. We have all of these great ideas that we really want to implement. We want to make sure that where we come from, filmmakers do not have to be in the same position that we were when we started out. We want to create an enabling environment where filmmakers can grow at a faster pace, can have access not just to local audiences, but audiences around the world, Africa and the world. And we can't do that if we are on our own. So this is an individual and a collective responsibility. And I urge each one of you, if you think that there's a better way that we can do things, share it with us. We intend to do regular mixes, again, because there wasn't much connectivity prior, but it is important for us to engage with our filmmakers. We want to know what you think. We are also practitioners. There are also needs that we have, myself and the chairperson. So it is important for us to know how we can take this industry from where we are at the moment to the next level. And yes, the challenges are there, but how can we address it? And what does it take? Does it take only the NFC, or does it take every single individual who calls themselves a filmmaker or a participant in this industry? And I leave you with that. Thank you.